My name is John Best. Welcome to Town Hall 93. Many of you are multiple participants. Today's going to be kind of an open day. So my name's I'm the CEO of Best Innovation Group. Usually I have Mike here, but I don't think Mike's going to be here today. And that's okay. He could deserve a day off. So we'll go through our sponsors here just because they help us to be able to do this every month or every couple of weeks, and we're thankful for them. CUNA. I'm actually going to be speaking at the CUNA CEO Roundtable tomorrow. I'm super excited about that. If any of you are going to be there, please don't be afraid to seek me out. I'll be around. You can text me, Discord me, Twitter me, I don't know, LinkedIn me. There's multiple ways to find me. I'm excited. Tomorrow we'll be talking about crypto, and one of our Credians on the call here, Visions, Cynthia's Credian, and she's been the leader in this space. She couldn't make it, but Joe's going to be there, Joe Keller, and we're going to talk about digital assets with the CEOs. And I think it's going to be interesting. Also going to be talking about fintech and kind of how to win with fintech. And I've got a lot of thoughts on that, put together a really good presentation, something I might bring here in the future. Speaking of the future, if you're looking for a modern host, if you're out there and kind of, hey, maybe we need to relook at things, Correlation is a fantastic platform. John Landis and the group developed it. All those folks were at Scimitar at one point. Just a fantastic group of people. And, you know, really, while the core itself is great, I can't say enough about the people, the Jeff Dents of the world, Landis and his team. And I'm sure other people have experienced a lot of the other great folks there. So, because at the end of the day, really, you know, core, not to say cores are all the same, they're not, but, you know, the people behind the company are really important. And that's where I look a lot for differentiators. Member Pass. We've talked about this a lot. You know, I've seen a lot of people using Duo. Gary, what's that thing you're using? Accepto? Isn't that what it's called?
Yes. Yeah, well,
yeah,
that was the name. They were purchased by SecureAuth.
Do you know the difference between SecureAuth/Accepto and Member Pass? Would you like me to tell you? Because on the front end, they look like they do the same thing, right? It calls your phone and you say okay, and then you
right. It's an MFA. It's a multi-factor.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that Member Pass is really not just that. It's a way to put your identity and walletize it as it grows, and it also uses the blockchain instead of just, as we learned with SecureAuth and the other ones. They're very dependent upon your local Active Directory, right? And so it's not sort of one password to rule them all. It's more of let's take the passwords you have and add MFA to it. Whereas Member Pass is a way to secure all of that information. It's really
for the user to approve the connection. So you log into using Active Directory, and then for the multi-factor, it sends you a push to your phone. And you have to either accept it or reject it.
Right. But this will actually check with hundreds of computers instead of just one or the other,
right,
like AP.
Right.
And not only that, but you can use it for your members. So imagine you were sitting at home, Gary, and you're on your couch, and because I know you sit on your couch, I've seen you with your lovely, lovely grandson, who I think you should show everybody. Gary's a new grandpa, which is awesome. And anyway, so Gary, you're sitting on your couch and you get a call from WANA. It says, you're about to authenticate to the WANA call center. Yes or no? And you know you're not on the phone with WANA.
Right.
So you say, no.
No.
And then on top of that, it goes out and it updates for whatever that information was, so that not only can you stop that person from doing it to you, but you can stop it from doing to a whole bunch of other members or even other Credians, because they're all sort of in one group. So
right.
It's way different than that. And I think that's a little bit of a marketing thing that I've got to talk to John Ainsworth about, that I was thinking about the other day. It's a different model, and I think a lot of us have those Acceptos and Duos and even Microsoft Authenticator, but this is a different model.
It puts the control in the user's hands.
It really does.
And anybody trying to use your identity, it has to come to you for approval in the moment.
Right,
on
then and there.
With a push notification. So it'll be much more secure.
By the way, that works over the counter, works at the drive up, works wherever. So
right.
If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. We've gotten really good at installing it. I say we, but we work directly with them, but it's going pretty well. So you should definitely check it out. CU Broadcast, that's Mike, my partner. He's usually on this. One of my best friends in the world, one of the nicest guys in the world, and someone who really cares about this industry. If you've not been to CU Broadcast to see what he's up to, I highly recommend it. You will just learn so much. It's one of the greatest places to collaborate, to learn. And Mike's energy is, and I know I don't have to say this because most of you have seen it before. It's just never ending. It's really awesome. And then there's us, Business Innovation Group, and we do a lot of stuff. We do SDKs for Q2, for Alchemy, for Bano. We do that kind of work. We also do lately, as a matter of fact, Gary and I just did something super fun that I was going to chat about it today, which is we did a tabletop exercise at his organization that I got to run to help satisfy some security requirements. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit coming up, Gary. You and I are going to discuss this a little bit. But yeah, check us out. Also, here's a favor I need from all of you. This is really important. So if you go to Big FinTech, and I'll jump in here, you go to bigfintech.com, you'll see that we have a podcast, and it's really good if you've not listened to it. If you like this format, you will definitely enjoy our podcast. It's called the Big Cast. But we are growing. We're getting bigger and we're doing more stuff, but we need to prove to everybody that we have subscribers. So for those of you that haven't, you would be doing us a huge favor if you would subscribe to our podcast. You can find all the information here. I'll put it in the chat. I don't normally mark it like this, but we're trying to drive up past I think it's like 10,000 subscribers, and we need everybody to pitch in to put us over that. A lot of people listen to it, but they haven't subscribed. And so I'm begging for subscribers just because we want to cross over that line, which will give us some more options inside of Apple and the podcast folks. We're actually coming out with a new podcast called FinTech Facts, which is going to be, first you're hearing of it here, but what it means is that you're going to be able to go through and listen. Like, for example, if you have employees that don't understand ACH, we're going to do a fun deep dive on ACH and FinTech Facts. It's going to be me, Kevin Sarber, who's on the call. Say hi, Kevin.
Hello.
Kevin is there to keep us honest. He's we call him Dr. Sunshine. That's his name. And Glenn. And we're going to do a deep dive. And between the three of us, we probably have 100 years of credit union background. So, when the first ACH was run, Kevin was the one that flipped the switch, probably. So he knows the history of it. And I think it'll be an exciting way for your staff to learn about these products and services, because there are so many products and services that are built upon those things, which is really important. So I find it fascinating that we don't have as much education as we used to. So we're going to do credit cards. Where did they start? We're going to talk about Venmo. We're going to talk about Zelle. We're going to deep dive on, like I said, ACH. We're going to deep dive on the Fed. How does the Fed work? Why does the credit union care? We're going to deep dive on all these things, but we're going to do it in an entertaining and fun way. And we hope that that's actually why we want to get the subscribers, because we're going to be pushing out this other podcast. And we're really excited to bring this to you, because we think it'll be a good way to engage all of your staff. And the way that if someone comes to you and says, hey, how do I learn more about this or that, without sort of, sending them off to School or something, or just getting them a little more involved pretty quickly, you can go pull down one of our podcasts, and that information doesn't really change. So, for instance, Kevin, did you know how a safety deposit box started?
No, John. How did a safety deposit box start?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Kevin. Here's how it started. To begin with, banks had vaults, and people who had stuff in their house that they were worried about being stolen would just take it up to the bank, because usually they would have money in the bank. And they would talk to the bank manager and say, hey, could I put this bag of stuff or this box of stuff in your vault? And they would say, why, sure you can. You have millions of dollars with us, or whatever. And so they would put it in there. And interestingly enough, what ended up happening was, as staff will do, they got curious and started looking in the boxes and discovered a couple of things. One, they're not insured for if the $1 billion of diamonds that Kevin put in a box and put in the vault was stolen. Two, the people who had boxes didn't like people looking in them. So then African-American inventor created the patent for the very first safety deposit box, which was a box that only you had a key to, that solved a lot of those problems, that was fireproof. And it began to spread like wildfire. So there's just a simple example of, and by the way, knowing about these things, they always have a tech parallel, right, Kevin? So do you have a lot of digital information that you need to store somewhere?
I'm afraid I do.
Right. So what does a digital safety deposit box? So those are the kinds of things we'll discuss. We'll have a lot of fun with it. We'll talk about, there's little stories behind people who put their stuff in there before they had the boxes and what happened, and just super interesting, super fun. So come check out that podcast when we get it rolling. It's going to be called FinTech Facts. We'll do a big rollout here. But in the meantime, if you could subscribe to the big cast, it'd be super helpful for us. Unless your name's Mike Lawson. And then, yeah, Mike's like, wow, he's 20 minutes in and he hasn't gotten past the thing without me.
It's fascinating, John. I mean, we learned something today. So thank you.
Well, I've told you about
I love
FinTech.
it.
I know you're.
Oh, yeah. But the whole safety deposit box, how it started.
Yeah.
Great story.
Did
Love
you know
it.
this? Do you know how a credit card was made?
I have no idea. Out of wood?
It was
Tree
IBM.
trunk?
It was an IBM guy.
Okay.
He wanted to be able to put data on the card. So you know how remember the cassette tapes?
Yeah.
So remember how if you pulled them out, they'd be a big mangled mess.
Hmm.
But they were a little magnetic thing that you would record onto, right?
Yeah.
So he took a strip of that, he ironed it onto the card, and then built the reader. Because that's how a cassette works: is the cassette passes the tape over a head, which
Right.
turns it into the sound you hear. So he figured if you just swiped it through, you would get the data from there.
Love it. I
And
love
there
it.
it was with an iron. I assume
an
it was
iron.
I assume it was one of those that you have to put in the fireplace like Kevin uses. Don't you use one of those, Kevin? By the way, there'll be a lot of age jokes about Kevin on the podcast, so you'll enjoy that as well.
Oh, I'm signing. I'm
Even though-
subscribing.
Yeah, even though I'm not that much younger than him, but I still
I'm
get that.
subscribing.
Hey, Mike, have you been to the MetaBranch.ai?
I have not yet.
Mark Wilson, have you been? I think you have, haven't you?
I have, yes.
So what was your experience? You got to check it out. We did a little bit on this. I'd be curious. I know you're signed up already, and Mark happens to be part of our innovation club. So what was your experience?
It's very enlightening. It's an interesting interaction, being able to be actually standing in a digital building and interacting with the digital folks that are in there and picking up items and being able to write on the walls and things like that. It's very cool.
And I think your branding, the next version we have come out has your branding. You were new to the Innovation Club, but it's seeing all the branding, right? Getting to see all the different crayons, like advertising.
Yeah, definitely. It's a whole new world.
So I was thinking about this the other day, Mark. I wanted to run it by you. So just like we had to incorporate Facebook, when we first started, I'm sure we were advertising like in our segs, right? Like, oh, leave some pamphlets around the seg. Then we moved on to, well, maybe we should advertise in the newspaper. And then I remember, this is about where I stepped in. I remember the first time that Suncoast put up an advertisement on a billboard. That was a big deal. We all drove around to see it. Look at our billboard. And then after that, it was TV commercials. I remember the first time I saw a Crayon TV on, during a football game, and then it was Facebook. And then it was, and I think the next one is this.
Yeah.
I think there are going to be these places that are like digital malls and stuff where you're going to need to have a presence. And we're not saying that you should go into the MetaBranch tomorrow. That's not the whole point. The point is to learn from it. And that was a learning I took away from a conversation you and I had at the end of our IC meeting. It kind of dawned on me as I was driving home that advertising side, because you were mentioning the branding, that advertising is going to open up a whole new world that we have to be ready for. So for marketing, if nothing else, I think it's going to be important to know how to advertise in the metaverse, which includes picking up things and doing things. It's not just a billboard. It's going to be a little more of an experience.
Yep, interactive. Yep, definitely.
So Mark, I have good news. The version that you're running, by next month, we should have it out on the MetaBranch AI so that anybody with an Oculus Quest or any kind of thing can just go to a website in their in the browser inside the Quest and can experience the same thing.
Awesome. Very
So
good.
if you haven't signed up, sign up. I know Mark really enjoyed it, and
Yep, it was good.
All right. So next month is the month when we are going to produce the crypto report. We have over 50 Ukrainians that have contributed data. We have learned a lot. We're going to be putting that out for everyone that contributed. Obviously, we're going to just ship it over to you. We're going to share it with everyone. It's just going to be one of those things where, you know, we want you to be part of our marketing and to work with us. But we have some fantastic data. As a matter of fact, I was just on the phone yesterday with Gordon Howe from Unify, one of the leaders in this movement. Also, Brenda from Idaho. Who knew? Idaho, big crypto place, doing really well with it. Would you have thought that, Mike?
No. Well, I'm happy to hear it though. What credit union is that again?
Oh, Idaho Central, I think, or something along those
Yeah,
lines.
that sounds actually, it sounds right. That sounds familiar. Yeah.
I want to say it's Idaho. Now you're gonna make me go look because
No, I'm fine. I'm sorry.
I'll get yelled at by somebody.
Sorry.
But yeah, it was
I think you're right. I think it's Idaho Central.
she sent us
John?
some data.
Sorry.
Idaho Central. Yep, Idaho Central.
Hey, John, Trish is at caucus today and or this week, and she was in a session, and she shared this with the credit unions there. So hopefully you'll see some increased usage over the next week or so.
The crypto report?
Awesome.
The
Oh,
crypto
cool.
report. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. It's super interesting, and it's something we need to keep track of. I know, Cynthia, you were the one that helped us figure this out. So we have a full, for those of our members of the innovation group, we have a full portal where they can go in, everybody can go in and see what's going on with other credit, compare themselves, understand how certain things affect certain things. So if you haven't gone and signed up, it's real easy. It's free. There's no money to this. You just go in, you sign up, and we'll give you the format for the data. If you can't get it out of your system or you don't have the expertise, we'll help you do that. I got friends in low places like James Burke Fraser at Scimitar, Jack Henry, Jeff over at Correlation. I can make it happen for you. DNA, I'll figure it out myself. I know folks there. But yeah, I think it's important to understand this because I think it's going to sneak up on
I have
us.
a question. If there's time, John, I have a quick question on the Ethereum merge.
Yes,
Because
let's
everyone's
talk
talking about
Let's do
that. So, I mean, if there's time, but I'm very curious about that. And obviously I know you're in the know here. So if there's time, that'd be kind of cool to get a quick explanation and how,
Sure,
and how it would affect a credit union.
Sure. You know, it's a good way to talk about it. Let's do it like this. So I'm going to do a little whiteboard on the crypto because I think it's a good question. So for those of you that haven't heard of Ethereum, so basically there are two main sort of cryptocurrencies that are really kind of the recognized leaders, right? And one of them is Bitcoin. You're all aware of that. And the other one's called Ethereum. I may have that spelled wrong. It might be EUM. That doesn't look right either. I think it's this. All right. So Bitcoin was the very first one. It was developed by Satoshi. It was like a fake person. There's a bunch of people that put it together. And really, it just does what it does. It can't be sort of built off of. So it's its own solution. But the way it works still today is through mining. So there's all these people that are running nodes, and these nodes all are working on a problem. They're competing to solve a big puzzle, right? And if they solve this puzzle, they get a reward. And there could be, right now, I think there are, let's see, I think there's over 4.5 million nodes running for Bitcoin, but I could be wrong. So they're all working to solve this puzzle. If they solve this puzzle, then they get to do two things. One, they will find a reward in the form of finance. So it'll be a Bitcoin of some sort, right? But they also get to process the transactions. This is an important thing that people don't understand. So when you transfer Bitcoin, someone has to be the one that processes that transaction. And so every time it goes out there into something, when you do that, someone gets to process that. And the way you process the transactions is you get to collect the fees. Remember that it costs some money to send Bitcoin. So when you send it, a certain amount of Bitcoin will go to the network for processing the transaction. Well, that's interesting. So if you get the chance to process the transaction, and us as credit unions would understand this very clearly, you also get the chance to organize the transactions. which means you can process them in any order you like. So you could take big money transactions and do them first. And you could do, the smaller money and do them last, right? And that's why it takes like an hour sometimes to do a transaction on Bitcoin.
Oh, wow.
Now, that makes sense so far? And this all is called, right? There's a name for this kind of thing. It's called proof of work. Your proof is you solved this complex puzzle, right? That was your work, you proved it, and now you get to process these transactions. You solved it. That's proof of work. That's what this is called. Now, Ethereum was running in a very similar process, but with a different kind of little thing. So Ethereum itself runs exactly like this, or has, but it also has this thing where it was designed so that people could build their own coins off of it. So you could create a coin, Filecoin being an example, or there's a lot of them. Ethereum has so many coins built on top of it right now. Sia coin, another example. So there's all these different coins, and they run the same way. They're just like a version of Ethereum that uses the Ethereum backbone, but at the same time, it's its own special thing, right? But in the background, Ethereum is always run the same way, which means that people are they're competing, running a node that's competing to solve a puzzle. And if you solve that puzzle, then you win the chance to run those nodes. The problem with all this solving of puzzles is, when we first started this, and this is funny, I'm writing a book on this actually. It's going to come out hopefully in September.
Oh,
Yep. And so I went back and I looked at my very first Bitcoin experience. Do you know how much Bitcoin I mined in 24 hours when I first set it up?
Not a clue.
11,000. You know what that's worth today?
I'm scared to ask.
2 billion, what's the number, Kevin, at 23,000 Bitcoin? You did the math the other day. Was it 2 billion or 200 million?
Oh my gosh. Well, either one, pretty dramatic.
But the challenge is that, and I'm going to share my screen here real fast just because I want people to see. The problem is that when I first did it, it wasn't very complex to do. It was really simple. Like I didn't even have to have a big graphics processor. All I had to have was a computer. And I actually just pulled up an old computer. I actually looked up what that computer was. And the computer I was running it on, for the nerds out there, hang on, I'll bring up a little bit of the first draft of the book here. So I'll show two things here on my screen share. Hang on. So the computer I ran it on was not anything special, Mike. As a matter of fact, it was pretty sad. It was an old computer I had lying around that here it is. So this is my this is kind of my first draft, but in here I was able to talk about my very first computer that I used to mine this. So I went back and actually looked it up. I looked up exactly how much I got and the system I was running. So the system I was running, this is the original screenshots from when I did it, because I found the presentation that I created to show the staff at Westcom, because they wanted to know about this. So I was able to find my original screenshots for this, which I'm putting in the book.
Oh my gosh. Is it like a Texas Instruments computer or a calculator?
No,
or
it was a Dell. Let me find it here. It was a
Commodore
Dell.
PC.
I want to say it was, there it is. It's a Dell computer with an Intel Pentium. And it only had, I think, 4 gig on it, or not even that actually. And it had a solid state drive, not solid state drive. It had a disk-based drive. So that's what I was able to run day one. This was pretty close to early days. I think it was 2009. You can see 0204. I remember I went to Batcave, North Carolina, to speak to Cardwell people, which included all these incredible CEOs that, or people that were going to become CEOs that now are CEOs. They run big crayons. And I was supposed to go in and teach them about magic money and imaginary money.
Was that Jim Cardwell?
Jim Cardwell. Right.
Yeah.
So he invited me out to speak to them, and I got to go hang out in Batcave and go zip lining with them. And I've been lucky, stuff. So let's look at what a Bitcoin mining center looks like. I want you to just get some idea of the scale of this. right? I mined 11,000 coins with just a cheap Dell. But now let's look at, and this is from March 21st, so pretty
Are you sharing
regular.
your screen? Are you sharing your screen?
That's what you're here for, is you're here to tell me when I'm not sharing my screen. So
There
here
we
it
go.
is, Mike, check it out. This is Hive's mining farm in Sweden. You can see, look at all the boxes
Good.
here. This one is, this one I think is in China. China has ginormous ones. You can see today they're down. ETH has actually gone up since the change a little
Yeah, I
bit.
saw that. Mhm.
But I'm gonna explain the rest of ETH here in a minute, but you gotta understand this mining stuff. So they're gonna talk about, but they're showing kind of this big thing. And this is actually, that's a good example. There's a huge one right there. All of those are like gaming GPUs, things that people use for their gaming, but then are get used for this mining, because it takes a high level of processing power to solve the issues as it relates, or to solve the puzzles. With a high level of processing power, then what does that mean? Well, it means, go back to my whiteboard, that this thing is taking up a ton of electricity, and it is just killing people. It is just a lot of money to
Yeah.
run all these things.
Yeah.
'Cause it used to be you could just run it as one thing, but the puzzles get harder and harder to solve with every round, until it got to the point that it can't be solved with one computer. It can't even be solved with 10 computers. It can't even be solved with 100 computers. You got to have thousands of them in order to solve the problem. But they are still proof of work. Ethereum was running the exact same way. And as a result of that, you could buy, and you right now, you couldn't buy anything off the shelf from, say, Best Buy or anywhere like that, and run a Bitcoin node. It's not going to happen. Not make anything. You just lose money. Ethereum, you could still buy off the shelf GPUs, which is like your NVIDIAs or your graphics cards that your kids want, and you could go in and make some money. Problem was, it was just taking up lots of electricity, and it was taking the puzzles were getting more complex. And Ethereum had all these other things where they were doing these other types of coins that were related to it. They could write on there. Big thing about Ethereum, its big game was the smart contracts. That was something that was really built into it. So they switched as of tomorrow, from proof of work to, it's going to be, do you know what it is, Mike?
No.
Proof of stake. So let's talk about steak for a minute. I love steak. It's delicious.
Making me hungry.
But not that kind of steak.
Oh, sorry.
What we're talking about is the kind of steak, like, for example, you play poker.
Sometimes
So when you go in, you got to do what before you get in the table?
got to make a bet.
You got to put your stake, right? You got to show what you
Yeah.
have. You got to make a stake, right?
Yeah.
So now, instead of whoever solves the puzzle that is going to get to run these transactions and do things, it's going to be about how much Ethereum you have and how you can accommodate those transactions. So for example, let's say you had $1 million transaction, and I was going to process it for you. Well, in order for me to process $1 million transaction, wouldn't you want me to have at least $1 million to cover your transaction?
Please.
Right. So that's proof of stake. So as of tomorrow, they will be switching over to this, which means all these people, me included, that were running these little nodes that were making them money, they're going to have to take the money they have and switch the node over, and they won't need all this GPU. It's not going to be driving all this electricity. It's not going to be, I mean, I kid you not, to run any of these things, you got to have like a 30-watt breaker in your house, a 30-amp breaker, just to even, get rolling. It drives so much wattage. That's the whole gig, is how cheap the power is versus how much you can mine, and that's how you make your money.
Right.
So once this goes to proof of stake, it's not going to be about, as I said, your competing to solve the puzzle. It's going to be about how much money you have to run a transaction. And then with that in mind, you'll be able to prove that you can sort these transactions and what your stake is. So if you have a lot of Ethereum and you can set up a node and stake it, then you'll make some money. But what's not going to happen is, it's not going to be just you staking it. What's going to happen is, because just like anything else, there is so much competition for this, that it's going to be pools of people staking. So we all stake, me and Mike, we all throw in our money. Then if I have 500,000 and he has 500,000, then we could do $1 million transactions and we can charge. Just like interchange, the more money the transaction is, the higher the interchange. And so the more money Mike and I make. So having a million ETH or gas or WAY means we can run transactions at $1 million, which means that we would have to have 10 million or $15 million really in ETH to run that. But we would be able to command big transaction fees for every one of those. Does that help?
Yep.
And so as of today, or tomorrow, and I'll share my screen again here so you can see. We are going to go to proof of stake. And what that's going to mean is, let's see where we are. Countdown. So here it is. You can look at it on Twitter. We're 9 hours, 18 minutes away for what they call the merge. And what that's going to do is merge two networks together. That's going to create the that. So if you're interested in this stuff, like here's a great example. I know it seems like gobbledygook, but if you look closely, you can kind of figure it out. This is where they are in the block hash. So every block has to be done. The last block was 2 minutes ago. Look at the difficulty on this. That is a really large number that I can't calculate. I give it to Kevin, but his abacus is not this big. Told you, there'd be lots of jokes about Kevin, and he's okay with it, right, Kevin?
Always a good target.
So if you're interested, I'll put this on, I'll throw this in the chat.
I think my link might not have worked so well for some folks. So
but yeah, it's fascinating. I'm glad you brought it up. I didn't think about it as a topic. That's why you're around. That's why you're
I saw that the other day. I went, okay, I have to talk to John about this at some point. So it seems pretty interesting. And how would how would it affect a credit union in this case? So yeah,
it's
pretty monumental.
I think so. So the other thing I was going to talk about today is security. So I had the good fortune of doing something fun the other day with Gary and his group. And I want to talk through it and see if anybody else has had a lot of experience with that, to kind of see what's going on, because I'd like to do more of these. So Gary, you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
You can go first.
Okay, so who here has done a tabletop exercise? So I know Cynthia has, and Trish, and the groups from there. I also know Antonio has from GCU. And so, these tabletop exercises are like a game. It reminds me, and I never was cool enough. Did you ever play Dungeons and Dragons, Mike? I was never cool enough to be involved.
No, I didn't really. I knew lots of people who did, who were really into it. I kind of lived vicariously through them, but not personally, no.
So the whole goal was to run the crane through a realistic scenario that was not real, but to pull all the people in the room that would have to collaborate and work on a certain problem. And I've done a few of these, but I did them all as kind of live entertainment almost for back in was ISACA and some of those other conferences way back in the day. But Gary needed one, and Gary's a close friend, and I wanted to really work with him to help him out. So and he's a client, so also I don't normally do them, but now I'm kind of thinking about it because I really enjoyed it so much. So I put together a scenario. I wouldn't tell Gary what it was. I'll let Gary take it from there and talk a little bit about what happened.
That was the most stressful part, was not knowing what the scenario was. But if you know the scenario, it allows you to cheat. And that was John's point. He's like, if this incident happens, you're not going to know what it is, and you're going to have to react. So you're going to have to rely on your processes and your procedures to be able to work through the issue. The really helpful part was John was able to throw us curveballs. So as we talked as a group, so the tabletop exercises, we have our processes and our procedures, and we pull it out and say, okay, here's the scenario, what happened for the cyber attack. And what do you do? And so you pull out the incident response plan, and you start going through the steps. It helps you identify gaps or holes in your plan based on a realistic scenario. And John throwing you curveballs to walk through things that you need to improve. That's the whole point. So before an incident happens, you are more prepared. So we went through that. It was a 2-hour exercise, and we didn't have a defined escalation plan for involving the correct people. So that was kind of the big takeaway from the exercise was we need to put together an escalation process and how we're going to communicate. We worked well together as a team where the different departments, there were representatives basically of all the departments in the room. There was 15 total people, I think. So you don't want to have too many people, but you want to have enough that you can go through a realistic scenario and talk about what you're going to do. And it was just really beneficial. Now, the difficult part is I've got to take the write-up that John did with the recommendations, get the team back together and say, okay, how are we going to implement these changes that we need to make? And so I haven't started that process yet. This was just a couple of weeks ago that we did the exercise, but it was really a good experience. And it was good having a facilitator and a separate scribe that wasn't involved in the exercise. And John was a really good facilitator because he was able to throw us curveballs. It would really be hard to do yourself as a credit union because you'd know what the scenario is and you'd be able to kind of cheat a little and make assumptions. When you don't know what the situation is, you can't make those assumptions. And that was really eye-opening for me.
Yeah, what I liked about it was I got to have some fun with the scenario, Mike. So I made it happen on, I gave him a date. I said, this is happening on November 24th, 2022, which is the day before Black Friday, which I know is a big mess for the credit cards, and I know because I have a lot of insight in, baseball, having run credit unions and done over the years. But that was the fun part. But what my favorite thing was I forget the lady. I'm gonna say it was your risk management. She's like, yeah, I thought, when I heard this was gonna be 2 hours, I was thinking I should probably bring a knife or that, maybe it's time for me to quit or retire. And it sounded like she had a good time. I think that's the other part is this does not have to be this stressful, crazy thing. I think it could be really eye-opening, really fun. And that's why I kind of took a different approach for you guys. I built these scenarios. I had at times what would happen. I tell them what time of the day it was, for how long it took for them to get through certain things. Because if you want to be realistic about it, you have to know what time it is. Hackers don't attack you at the optimum time of the day when everybody's behind their desk and working. So it was super fun. I was just wondering because I've never done any but my own. So I was going to talk to Cynthia. Cynthia, you've shared with me kind of you guys' experience. How do you guys go about it, if you don't mind sharing? You or Trish? Uh-oh. She might not be listening. She might be multitasking. Let me ask Mark. Mark, you there?
No, go ahead and ask again. I'm sorry, John.
Okay, so it's okay. So I know you shared your tabletop exercises, and so we were just explaining the one I just did for Juana, which was, I thought, super fun. I've told you 100 times I love these. How do you guys go about it at Visions? What we did with his was we all got in a group. We had 15 people in the room. I put together a big scenario. I had times, dates of what would happen. I didn't share it with them ahead of time. I just sort of had a presentation that would roll through the different things that would happen. It had the actual emails from different things that were sent, blah, blah, blah. I know there's different ways of going about this. So I was just curious as to, does Visions conduct those in-house or do you conduct them?
Yeah, we conduct them in-house. So our AVP of cybersecurity, she runs them, and we include key people from IT, risk, and different areas based on the scenario that we're using. And we try and use current threats or things that we've seen on FS-ISAC that have been coming around. So if we do an HR one, then the AVP or VP of HR is included in several of our employees. And usually what we do is we have the tabletop exercise, and then we usually do a follow-up because there's usually follow-up that comes out of those exercises, especially a lot of lessons learned. So then we do a second version of it after we've implemented some of the lessons learned from the first. And then it's all documented in the minutes and submitted up through our ERM committee.
Nice. And then some version of an executive summary is provided to the board, right?
We only do the executive summary ones to the board when they're ones that we've done around like Kaseya, when Kaseya occurred, I think last year.
Or ransomware, which was part of Kaseya.
Yeah, or the ransom, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was a big part of there, was putting something together that was board ready as a document for Gary, but also giving an executive summary or a senior management ready, but a document as well for the follow-up. Ransomware is next on the list of, I think that's what we're gonna do next, right, Gary?
Yeah, yes, that's what we talked about. We haven't scheduled anything yet, but that's what I think that's the next one that we think we get value from.
Yeah,
And the minutes, John, our minutes from our tabletops go up through our cybersecurity and IT steering committee, and then to our ERM committee, and then to the supervisory committee that then gets sent to the board. So it has several layers that get to see the minutes from those tabletops.
it's interesting you give them the scenarios ahead of time. I don't like doing that. I like to, because I want to see how everybody reacts. Have you thought about not giving them the scenarios ahead of time?
We'll do it two different ways. So sometimes we'll give them a week or so to digest it, to be prepared. And sometimes it will just be a surprise, depending on what the threat is.
I like the surprise one. That's the one I want to do. Surprise!
I can tell you that it was more stressful, it being a surprise.
Yeah, but it's
I didn't feel as prepared, but in the long run, it was better.
It'll make you more prepared. Yeah.
Correct.
well, I think you can do both. One of the things that came out of Gary, if you don't mind me sharing, was
Sure.
you needed to strengthen your book of services. That was something we found a lot of, which is understanding sort of dependencies on things. Like I would say, okay, well, what are you going to do? You're going to shut this down. If you're going to shut it down, what's the impact? What's the domino effect? And you knew, but there wasn't one place. There wasn't a one place to go to look at all those book of services to know who definitively was the person to call. But it turned out somebody in the room knew. There was always the information. That's the best part about Craig, is so many people knew. But getting that into, so when you're in a real scenario, which is why I kind of pushed the issue there. But that was one of the things we touched on. The other thing I found fascinating was how well and cohesive the group was once they sort of just bonded together and said, okay, and there wasn't a lot of infighting, and there was even facilities was there, because there is facilities versions of this that can happen, and that can be you do sometimes have people that have worm their way in via a branch or some other entry point into the network. But Cynthia, thank you for sharing. I think that's really important. I think that's if I look at your Crayon and Gary's is much smaller. That's the path he's on, is building all of what you just said. And the first step was, can we even get through this? Let's identify the gaps. Let's make sure we're covered for now as we build out the rest of this infrastructure all the way up to the supervisory committee, the cybersecurity stuff, which is, I think, as you grow, it's necessary. You have to do it.
The two that come out annually from FS-ISAC are really useful too, John and Gary.
Yeah.
If you haven't done one of those, I would definitely do that with your senior team and the heads of a lot of your departments, because that usually touches on not only IT and risk, but lending and digital and all those different areas. So those are really good too, and they're free.
Yeah, those are great. I actually used a little of that to plan out Gary's scenario, so it would have some basis. And
Good.
yeah, because they were being audited on it, so it's good to have something. A lot of people are doing this to catch up on audit or to show
Right.
various things, which is good. So, question for you: how does that relate to BCP? So, I love cybersecurity tabletop exercises. I hate business continuity planning because it always ends with, and then aliens came, and there's no answer for that. It's just kind of wasting. It's like, well, then we're all dead, or the nuclear happens. Yeah, I'm dead. You're dead. I don't know if I care. So how did those two things relate? Because I was struck by the fact that there could be some BCP involved, particularly when it relates to ransomware, and wanted to get some feeling for what others were doing in terms of those two scenario planning concepts.
From Visions, we do two separate. So our cybersecurity tabletops are completely separate from BCP, but you're right, they do have components of it, but we do an annual BCP exercise, usually, where lights are out for a month at a time, or all of the internet providers are, we do something like that every year.
Yeah, or big storm rolls through and nobody can get, which now it's funny, a lot of our BC planning is kind of out the window, right? Because a lot of it was staff planning. We're going to get a couple trailers and we're going to put them now and just send everybody home and let them work from there. But that used to be a
You're
thing.
right.
I remember,
You're right.
Kevin, didn't we have those trailers set up for one of our BCP things where they bring them out to the parking lot or whatever?
Yeah, we had the generators there, and then we had backup fuel that continually would come back and add fuel so that we didn't run out until
Well,
we
we
were
also had
restored.
those trailers that we would have, if the building was demolished altogether, they would run them out to the other place and put them in the parking lot.
Yeah, that was the benefit of having a mobile branch as well, was the fact that it was already sitting there waiting to be deployed if we needed it.
Man, it's always seemed to me that BCP is one of those areas, another area where collaboration amongst gradients could just save so much money. Because it's like, well, what are the chances that both, WANA and, I don't know, I'll use Gary's old alma mater, Unitas get hit, they're pretty far away from each other, right, Gary?
Yeah, WANA is more rural. We're on the coast. Most of our branches go along the coast by Astoria. And Unitas is based in Portland. So
Yeah, so I mean, that would be, and we did that for people, I think, Kevin, didn't we run DR out of our shop for a lot of people? We had like backup boxes and all that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Part of WRG's offerings for a while.
Yeah, it's just fascinating to me, like how this played out. So I just really enjoyed it, and I thought it'd be an interesting topic. Let me jump over to Antonio. Antonio, what do you guys do at GECU, if you don't mind sharing? And if Antonio doesn't ring out with the mark. He's right now desperately trying to find the mute button. Oh my God, he called on me. All right, Mark, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, we
Oh, tell everybody about your credit union a little bit. I'm not sure if I know
Okay.
about your credit union.
we're 2.2 billion Southeast Virginia. Started out as a shipyard seg, but now we've got a community seg for the Tidewater, Virginia area, a little bit into North Carolina too. We routinely do BCP exercises, tabletop exercises, and we've incorporated the cyber and stuff into that. So we don't do it separate right now.
I was wondering, I thought there was a logical connection there. I just couldn't
Yeah.
quite put my finger on and how to play it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, every department's required to have all those aspects built out into their BCP plans. And then the department heads get together periodically throughout the year and they run, tabletop exercise or just talk through some scenarios. And it's always enlightening to, hear different people's takes on things and, it's surprising what people know and what some people don't know. So
Yeah,
it's always a great exercise.
yeah. It was one of the really cool things that came out of WANA's one was, there's Antonio. Somebody, and he also is rocking the best beard. But somebody was like, oh, you could just send one email and that would do this. And there was like a process in place that could be incorporated into the current documentation and policy that was really helpful, that a lot of people in the room knew about, but just didn't think to sort of take that ingredient and put it into the policy, which I love stuff like that because there's nothing to do there. It's already done. You just sort of bake it in, I'm sure you guys find a lot of that as well.
Yep, definitely.
Antonio, how's Texas today?
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Hear you clear as a bell.
Sorry, you were right. I was scrambling to find the unmute button. Was lost in all this.
That's part
sea
of
of
the fun of this thing is like calling on people and watching them scramble.
So here at GCU, we hold a yearly tabletop exercise. We have different scenarios that the Information Security Department prepares, shooting, burglary, flooding, those types of events. And then each department has their own business continuity and disaster recovery procedures. So this exercise gives us the opportunity to kind of test what we would be doing and test also the processes, the chain of command, the communication, and also it gives us the opportunity to compare to what we actually did on events that may have happened in the year. We also have, like someone mentioned, I think it was Cynthia, the lessons learned, which our information security department does a very good job at documenting this. And also, as you know, this is used for our NCUA exam when needed.
You know, you just made me think of something, you and Mark. So, you know, I think we're going to see more of this in the future, Mike, and everyone is, if let's say a crisis happens like hurricane, an act of God, whatever, that is prime time for cyber criminals to really happen. And I'll tell you, I used to see it happen. And Kevin, you remember I talked to you about this, that during hurricanes in Florida, we would have to go into stand-in for our ATMs and our Visa cards and stuff. And what stand-in means is that lines would get knocked down by the weather, Mike, and it would, when it knocked it down, you could lose communication with the network, but people needed their money because they might need it to get boards to board up their window, or a tree fell in their house or whatever. So you would put in these big stand-in rates and during the hurricane, but then bad guys would know somehow that you were in stand-in, and they take advantage of that opportunity. No different than people popping up, you know, GoFundMe's for bad situations that aren't real. But we discovered, and
Wow.
Kevin, you and I discovered this during multiple conversions, that somehow there seemed to be a way that they knew they were in stand-in. Do you remember that, Kevin? Anybody else experienced that? But Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of times it was doing a balance inquiry because you couldn't get your balances. You were working off a negative file. And so, you know, when you would go to get a balance, they were operating against the daily limit as opposed to the account balance. So that was how the one of the ways that the crooks would identify the fact that the system was down.
So I guess what I'm saying is, and I think Mark, you were kind of alluding to this, is I believe that BCP, you almost have to compound it, because if the bad guys know there's something going on, they know for a fact that Antonio's distracted. No offense, Antonio, but they know Antonio's trying to deal with branches that are down, or maybe even people in his department. They know this is a time when, if they wanted to pull something, now would be it. So I do think, as I was just trying to think it through for my own head, Mike, in the sense of, should we combine these things? And I think you have to, because that's a hallmark of a lot of this criminal activity, is to piggyback it. I know during the wildfires, and Kevin, you could probably, well, you especially, Mike, there were people sort of doing certain scams, but there were also crazy things that happened because of the wildfires, because they knew people were displaced out of their homes.
Brett Martinez would be a good person to ask about that as well at Redwood.
Oh, really? What happened? What happened?
Well, I mean,
And
they are
John,
dealing with wildfires all the time, so up in their neck of the
Oh,
woods.
yeah,
so,
yeah, out that way.
yes.
Yeah, amazing. Well,
John, I wanted to add.
Oh, go ahead.
So it doesn't even need to be a situation happening, because I remember many years ago here at GCU, we would do this annual release implementation of our core system, where we would be, back in the day, 6-8 hours offline. And to your point, people would know that we would be down and we will be using stand-in limits, and our ATMs will be on a stand-in mode, and they would take advantage of that. So it wasn't necessarily because we were having an outage, an act of God, or something like that. I think it's a great idea to expand the view or the focus of this types of situations.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to think through, like, I think all the internal stuff is good, but I'm just selling my own service now, so I'm blatantly doing it. So I think I could come in and like pulling everybody together and scare the shit out of them, which is good, I think, because I think the internal stuff's good. It walks you through it, but I could throw curveballs because I just know the systems inside and out to help us strengthen those things. I think having an outside now and then might be useful. And that's was the thing, because Gary and I struggled. I mean, Gary's an amazing talent. He's perfectly capable of running a tabletop exercise. But given the situation, we both agreed, hey, this might be good for me to do. you know, that one to validate even further, to get a really good write-up and do that stuff. So how often should a credit union hold it? Yeah, that's a good point. I think Cynthia said they were biannually, but how often should some
Quarterly. No, we do
Oh,
it
quarterly. Oh, that's great.
quarterly?
Yeah, John, I wanted to add something on that too. I think one of the things that we forget about or should be testing too is usually, like when the Kaseya happened, we had the print nightmare in the morning, and then the credit unions that got hit with Kaseya in the afternoon were all focused on that print nightmare, and they were, taken away from looking for other things. And I think that's another good test to do, because that's usually what they do, is they come at you in one way, so you're focused on dealing with one issue and hit you on the back end.
I think I actually advocate, and I know you and I have discussed this before. I think that's why you're throwing me a bone here, but you're absolutely right. I advocate for two teams, like during a DDoS scenario. One team's focused on the DDoS, the other ignores it completely and focuses in on, let's check everything end to end, because that's what you do. I mean, if you're going to rob a place, a distraction is good. And a DDoS is a good distraction. A big fish email, which is what has been, there's a lot of people, I don't know if anybody's seen this, but one of the scenarios I've been seeing a lot, and I was talking to Anthony Bender, who is a security specialist in the creating space. We were talking about the fact that SharePoint, now that so many people have moved to Office 365 and Azure and the Sky, SharePoint's a really powerful product these days. It has a shell scripting thing that you can use. And both of us, including Pete, which a lot of you know Pete from Deer. Well, basically, I found 4 credit unions that all experienced the exact same thing, the exact same fish, the exact same results, what it did, and it was very targeted. It was interesting. It was sent towards CEOs, which we talked about. They can find you on LinkedIn. They know who they're looking for. It was also sent towards like ACH staff, so they know what they're looking for. But that little scenario could have been easily a distraction for something much bigger. And because it's, if you send a bunch of phishing emails to the board members and the senior staff and they all click on it and you get their attention, that like you're not watching, the alert might come in. That's one of our problems, is we have so many alerts and notifications. I love all of you, but there's no way you can humanly possible sort through all of those without another subsystem. And then you need a subsystem after that. It's just the reality of the world we live in. We keep building walls and they keep building bigger ladders. And that has been the way since, I'm sure the first person, the first rock was dug a hole and put in to hide it from everyone else, So absolutely. Well, we're right at the end of the time, but before we go, Mike, what's going on with you? You've got to be heading out to a few places.
Unitech Council and Operations and Member Experience Council next week. We will be there with the Studio Lounge, and I look forward to seeing you and anybody else on the call who's going to be there as well. We'll have the Studio Lounge there conducting interviews on site, and really excited about it.
I won't be there. It's a pretty cool commitment. I'm going to Carnegie Mellon. I was asked to speak to Carnegie Mellon professors on some of the stuff I'm doing for robotics.
Well, even better. Congrats on that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I have to show them that, my degrees from the University of Phoenix, very prestigious school, and they know that now. They understand, what I do.
Yeah.
But no, I'm actually going out to speak to a whole bunch of professors at Carnegie Mellon next week.
Wow, that's cool, John.
Yeah, I really wanted to do that. I'm interested. What's that?
Quick question on Ethereum for the merge. What does that mean for people that have Ethereum or Ethereum Classic?
It means that you need to go maybe find a pool to put your stake in to make some money. So it's going to be like an interest-bearing account. You need to find a pool where you can add your money to it, and then they start turning transactions, and you'll get repaid based on that transaction. Which is why a lot of people, I told them, hey, mine until you can't mine anymore. Get as much as you can, and then when the time comes that it goes to proof of stake, you'll have a lot more to use in the proof of stake model.
Okay, I'll talk to you about it offline later.
Yeah, that blog that Mike put out is good for that. So absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully that. Cynthia said the link didn't work, but there's a lot of resources out there to find out more information on this type of stuff. And John, you're one of the main resources, so that's why I wanted to ask you about it as well.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to put out that book. You saw a little of it there. I'm putting the finishing touches on it. And I'm going to release that and the audiobook for Breaking Digital Gridlock, with maybe a little bit extra stuff in that coming up soon, hopefully before Christmas. I want to talk budgets for the next one. I know everybody's working on their budget. I'm interested in people sharing like what their top budget things and
Yeah.
concerns are, because I think
Good
that's gonna
question.
help everybody. I know a lot of people investing in certain AI places, certain robotic process automation. So I think it'd be good for a little sharing exercise. So that'll be our next one, is the budgeting.
Right on.
I was
Right
thinking
on.
about holding like a tabletop exercise, like doing it as part of one of these in the future.
That would be
like-
fun.
And then making like people like Mark and like just giving everybody a little bit of an assignment, like Kevin will pretend he's audit from a credit union. We're gonna make you marketing and force you through. We'll make up a credit union. We'll call it the One ATM Credit Union. I don't know, something like that.
Right on. Right on. Look
Hey,
forward
I'll
to the-
FaceTime you while you're out there so I can say hi to some folks. I'll catch you.
We'll do. We'll do.
You
sir.
can see whatever Carnegie Mellon looks like. I didn't even realize I had to fly to Pittsburgh. I didn't know where it was. So learning. I'm not big on the Ivy Leagues. All my learning comes from YouTube. That's all
Right
I know.
on. Right on. Well, that's exciting, John. Look forward to hearing more about it when you get back.
I will. I'll be sharing a lot. I'll have some pictures and some background. It's
Oh,
pretty
cool.
cool what they're doing. It's neat stuff. That's where the future happens.
Right on. Right on.
All right,
Excellent,
take
sir.
care, everyone.
That was cool. All righty, guys. Well done.
Later.
Thanks,
Thanks,
John.
John.
See ya.
Bye-bye.